Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. As you all know, my name is Sajida, and I'm honored to be president of GlobalWE. So first of all, Happy New Year to everybody, to you and yours, and wishing that 2021 is a much better year than 2020 and that we continue to have hope for better times. As you all know, Harvard GlobalWE is a shared interest group of the Harvard Alumni Association, and we are dedicated to the empowerment of women through education, dialogue, and connection among individuals working for women's rights and freedoms worldwide. We highlight and raise awareness about issues concerning women's empowerment, including but not limited to education, political rights, freedom from violence, women's health, and of course, economic empowerment. Our board of directors is as global as our interests, with representatives in the US, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Turkey, and of course, India. In fact, today we have with us, we have Auntie, who is our programs chair. Auntie lives in India. We have Barbara, who is our GlobalWE Connect chair, and Barbara's in Chicago. We have Recep, who is one of our outreach chairs, and he lives in Turkey. And I'm just checking, we have Janina, and Janina is our board secretary and is currently still in New Jersey. Yes, I can see that from her background because I know the color of her room now. And then we have myself, and I live, I'm just checking that there's no other board members, no. And I live in Dubai. So we are very diverse, and what that allows us to do is hopefully bring you diverse programming as well, because GlobalWE is, of course, international. I think that, we were just reflecting earlier on how unique the last year has been. And while COVID-19 has certainly curtailed travel and curtailed connections in some ways, in other ways, it's allowed us to come together on a more global platform. And luckily for GlobalWE, we've always welcomed global connections. So, we've tried to enhance that more in the recent times. The GlobalWE Movie Club is indeed one of these rays of sunshine that we have seen in the last year. And it's a way for us to come together and virtually connect as we discuss shared understandings of movies focused on women and empowerment. So welcome to our first movie club in 2021. I'm really looking forward to the discussion because this is a movie that certainly has lots of eyebrows been raised about. We're going to do basically a quick intro from one of our members. I'll introduce her in just a second. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms where you'll be guided with some questions for further discussion. And then we'll come back into the main room for a group discussion, and then we'll take it from there. So before we go into our breakout rooms, we'd like to take a screenshot for social media. If you're okay with that, please leave your camera on. If you're not okay with that, please feel free to turn your camera off. So I hope everybody's ready. And Auntie, whenever you're ready to take the shot. And Janina too as a backup.
Sure.
Ready?
1, 2, smile. Okay, another one for window 2. 1, 2, and smile. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks so much, everybody. So I would now like to introduce you to Joanne Finkelstein, who is a wonderful supporter of GlobalWE and who has kindly agreed to host and facilitate the discussion today. Over to you, Joanne.
Thanks, Sajida. Hi, everyone. So good morning to everybody in the West Coast. Good afternoon to members in the East, and good evening to members joining us from Europe and Asia. I'm so happy to have, a group of about 20 join us. And this is the first Harvard GlobalWE Movie Club of 2021, and we are discussing the movie Cuties by Maimouna Decouré. So has everybody seen the movie? Most people.
Yes.
Yeah, so you know that Cuties is a coming of age story of an 11-year-old Senegalese girl living in Paris, caught between two cultures and between two distinct modes of femininity, one dictated by the traditional values of her Muslim upbringing, and the other by Western society. The main character, Ame, and her family have just moved into a new apartment, which eventually we learn is to make room for her father's new and second wife. And Ame is going to a new school in a poor suburb of Paris. So she becomes, as she's sort of looking to fit in, she she becomes enamored with a group of girls who dance and call themselves Cuties. And to try and be accepted by them, she starts dressing more like them, doing what they dare her to do. And eventually she wins their approval by teaching them very seductive adult dance moves that might help them win this dance competition that they're very much wanting to win. So the film's purpose, right, is to critique the sexualization of girls, especially girls of color, the policing of girls' sexuality, the double standards girls face, sort of be good and get attention for being sexual, and the effect, of course, of social media on kids. But it's been criticized for promoting child pornography and pedophilia, both because of the way Netflix marketed it. They sort of took what was supposed to provoke disgust and made it sexual. And they eventually pulled the artwork and put up more appropriate, marketing for it. And also, though, because the camera doesn't shy away from the girls' bodies at all. I like the movie a lot because I think it's a really powerful statement about what it means to be a tween, trying to figure out how to be a woman during this era of TikTok. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I see her pose in many of the same ways that we saw in the film. More sort of the pouty lips and crop tops, and not less the gyrating and finger sucking, thankfully. But the point is, girls are sexualized and pressured to look and move a certain way, and the film really captured that. I will say, though, that it made me uncomfortable, both in the way it was supposed to, but also because I was surprised by how much it lingered on the girls' bodies and their sexual movements. And I did wonder, was that necessary? It may have been. It just was a question I had. But anyway, ultimately, I did not come away thinking the depiction of an over-sexualized girlhood was an endorsement of it, which is sort of what the movie has been accused of. And as a side note, as my husband and I were watching the movie, my daughter kind of skipped downstairs and sort of stopped in her shoes and said, "I can't believe you're watching this movie. This movie is supposed to be so anti-girl." So she was really outraged. And apparently that is the word on TikTok, that it's a gross movie about girls. And she and her friends are a really great example of girls who identify as feminists, but find themselves kind of deeply conflicted by the messages that they're getting from the culture. And as somebody who really identifies as a feminist mother, it's inescapable. It's just inescapable. So I think I'll move on. I've prepared a few questions or sort of areas of discussion that you can use in the breakout rooms as a jumping off point. But they're just ideas, so feel free to take your discussion wherever it leads. It's more fun that way, more interesting. So Auntie, are you going to put these in the chat, or?
Yeah, I'm just going to put them in the chat.
Okay, and would you like me to say them?
Yeah, if you could just go over the questions once.
Okay, so the director has said that she wanted the film to draw attention to the sexualization of young girls, but people have said that she sexualized them with gratuitous close-ups of their bodies and was too titillating. So did this film cross the line, or simply make an important point about an already messy, sort of messed up society? 2, given we have people joining us from all over the world, it would be really interesting to hear about your take on the sexual objectification and self-objectification of girls where you live. So do you find girls in the country that you are living in are given the same mixed messages? And by mixed messages, they're both sort of expected to live up to this virginal moral standard while being fetishized. And number 3, what about the actors who were all about 14 years old? Do they have the cognitive abilities at that age to understand what they were creating and how it might impact their future? Do you think the line between sort of professional acting and exploitation was crossed? Number 4, what do you think was driving Amé's decision and behavior? Do you think she was doing anything, just sort of doing anything she needed to do to fit in? Or was she also acting out her anger at her father for taking a second wife, for hurting her mother? And then the final point of discussion or question is, what was the role of the auntie? Why do you think her mother intervened? Why did Amé's mother intervene at the end and tell the auntie to back off?
Super. So I'm going to just assign everyone to a breakout room with 4 people in each breakout room, and you would have about 30 minutes to discuss these questions, and if you would like to discuss anything else as well, and then come back to the main area, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with and hear what has been discussed in each of the breakout rooms. So I'm going to just assign it right away. So please join your breakout rooms.
Thank you, Joanne. That was very, very good.
Thank you.
Aarti,
Yes.
do you want to make it 5 people per room? Because sometimes like with 4 people, it's really hard to get the conversation moving.
In fact, like Barbara told me that there was some feedback from that 6 people was too much. So she
Oh, okay.
if we could do 4 people. So
Okay, that's
we
fine
did.
then. Victoria, are you okay? You're moving over? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry, I'm just joining you guys
Okay, no problem.
out of overnight working. Okay.
Okay, I'm going then to my breakout room.
Sure.
How do I join the breakout? Oh, here.
Just join. Do you want me to send you the message again? Yeah. Hey, Joanne, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. I think everybody's back. Joanne, do you want to take it forward? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Welcome back. I hope everybody enjoyed their discussions. I'm going to ask each group to pick one person to just sort of give us a roundup or a summary of what you discussed. So if you could just give us the highlights, that would be great. We can start with my group. I know Salima said that she would go. There was, we were also with Carmen, but Carmen didn't have audio. So mostly it was just me and Salima speaking.
So I can go ahead and share, and I'll try to keep it brief. But we had a great discussion within our room. We got just a little bit into this idea of what it means to be a young, right, woman within French society, but she's also Senegalese, and what it means to be caught between two worlds, where on one end, right, you have the auntie who's trying to make sure that you know what it means to be Senegalese girl, Senegalese woman. But on the other end, you have this French society where the girl doesn't seem to know what it means. And it's almost like she's pushing the limits on what it means for her to be a French girl in this society, trying to get away from her traditional upbringing. And what I also say is that it seems that nobody's paying attention to her. She's almost just kind of like going from place to place with nobody asking questions or teaching her, like, these are the worlds that you live in and this is how you make sense of it. And then we also touched on this idea that when it entered the American market, the marketing got in the way, but also people didn't take a step back to ask, what did the director do to make sure that the girls felt safe, that the parents understood what was happening? And that if people had done that, maybe they would have seen the different layers within this film, and they wouldn't have been quick to say, well, it's just over sexualizing the girls, because the movie is actually making a commentary on us as a society and the way we sexualize everything. These girls just seems to replicate it. And that's where I guess we have an issue. And I'll just end there.
Who wants to go next?
Laura, would you mind representing our group, the group of Karen, Laura, myself, and Victoria?
Sure, I don't mind. I guess I didn't really think about, what we most focused on, but we talked a lot about whether it was crossing a line or not, and I think generally people felt like the film was a serious film, and so maybe it was necessary to show things the way it showed them in order to kind of really show the pressures that the girls were under. But anybody else can jump in if they, want to add more to that. I think, we talked a little bit about, some, particular scenes like the end scene and what it meant, how suddenly it came on that she kind of abandoned the mignonette, the cuties, and also, kind of abandoned the Senegalese wedding at the same time and kind of made this choice on her own and what motivated that. And so I think that was kind of interesting point in the movie of, trying to define herself. So I'm trying to think what else have we, one thing that I brought up was I thought that her relationship with her mother and her mother being kind of dissatisfied with her own inability to have control over her own life, that her identification with her mother had something to do with her kind of taking that turn during the dance scene.
I have a quick question. Thank you, Laura. I know you're probably not done, but I have a quick question that relates to the mother and the relationship also to the auntie. And maybe Joanne, maybe you can help like clarify this, or somebody who wants to talk to this point. But was the auntie the father's sister?
I don't think that we
No.
ever find that out, and if other people got a different thing from it. And I wasn't even sure she was blood related. I guess toward the end I thought she was, but she definitely stood in for the matriarch of the culture and somebody who was going to pass on the Senegalese Muslim values.
So when I read a plot summary about it, it says that she's just a member of the community and she's brought in to sort of play that role, but that she wasn't related by blood. That's what one of the plot summaries that I read said.
And that might explain why, just in answer to one of the questions that that you asked, Joanne. But I mean, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but like that might answer the question as to why the mother felt more protective of her daughter vis-a-vis the auntie than allying with the auntie, because the auntie wasn't necessarily like, related necessarily. And I don't know how important that is in Senegalese society, whether blood relation versus non-blood relation, or, so, but it seems like that could be a reason. I don't know.
I would say there was an arc there that she became less aligned with the auntie as time went on.
Yes, that makes sense. I could see that, like through the growth, through the mother's own personal growth, but also the growth of the relationship between the mother and the daughter. Her recognizing.
It would come back to the earlier scene where she was looking through her feet and experience her suffering, but would never see the mother's face crying or anything at the beginning of the movie, when she became a witness to the whole tragedy for her mother and for herself, and we see her crying face but never the mother's crying face. So I think I agree with what you're saying, also because of this.
Mm-hmm. So from the next breakout group, is it going to be Bernadette?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So first off, thanks for picking this movie. And I applaud this entire group of women, because every time I'm on here, we're all grappling with things in such an honest way. It's like a coming of age for each one of us, and it's just beautiful to share. So thank you. Our group was really great, and we kind of straddled a couple of different perspectives. First, what are we really doing? Are we trying to assess or judge? Is this right? Is this wrong? Are we trying to discuss? Are we comfortable with it? And if we're not comfortable, why not? Is it because of something we failed to do with ourselves, or we did, or someone else did, or we watched? We really worked to kind of figure out where we were coming from in our discussion. And, we also discussed, rather than judging it, we kind of steered away from that. First, we allowed people to have their own experience, right? For whatever the circumstance and conditions are, these are the choices, to not nullify the choices because we don't agree with them or we see a trajectory that could be dangerous. I find it, personally empowering to not hold people back and to not say, don't try that, try it, go for it. God willing, there's going to be a safety net or a person or something that can steer you in a better way. And the question also came up is like, where are the student counselors and where are the teachers and where are the anybody else? Like, where are they? But to be honest, I've had points in my teen years where I was in a situation, and I think many of us have been, where there was no one, right? There was no women's group, there was no voice, there was nothing, right? It was just us grappling and probing and figuring it out. And the question came up, well, what happens now? Kind of, will she be marked by it? We don't want that for her, right? We don't want that for anybody, especially at that age. And the discussion kind of came out, well, what do we do with that? And exploring the idea of, can we own our mistakes? Can we go too far on anything? And can we say, yeah, I went too far. You know, that wasn't a choice that I would make today. Or that was a choice I made then because that felt right, but today it wouldn't, or that wouldn't be the right choice for someone else. You know, how do we free ourselves from not putting ourselves in a cage of saying so like wanting to do it right that we can't make mistakes? And then when we do, what do we do about them so that we're not held to them, right? We're not held to our weakest moment. And I don't know if I've missed something else. I think that, oh, and Genevieve, I don't know if you're where you are, I can't see on my screen, but we had somebody who was able to validate that this does happen in the French environment. And so, you know, this isn't a fantasy, this isn't an exploitation, this is like what is actually happening. And yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway, at least I know for me at the end of it, was what do we do with things when we go too far? And who gets to define that? Like, is it somebody else saying, well, that was too sexual for a 12-year-old, or is it the 12 or 14-year-old who gets to say, that's what I felt like trying out, you know, and at any age, can we do that, right? Is it somebody else who says that wasn't okay, or can we get to say, yeah, I see how you don't think that was okay, but I had a lot of fun trying it out. It's not what I want to do anymore. But, you know, so what do we do with mistakes, and what do we do with going too far? And can we really hold people back from exploring things, even if they make us uncomfortable? So I think that was everything. But anybody else in our group, please chime in. So. And we all figured it was a good idea to dance and to explore our own sexual expression, which I know for me, I'm definitely in these days not doing enough of that. So, yeah.
In our group, we talked a little bit about economic background, socioeconomic background, and we had I think many more things that we could say, but practically some of the things we said were that the movie could have been, so some people felt the movie could have been more exemplar of what it was trying to say if it wouldn't be in like public housing, if it wouldn't be in this kind of setting. And I personally felt that it, like, I mean, just the fact that there was this shocking scene for me where one teenager who is left with like a 2-year-old just locks him in the bathroom because she doesn't want to like deal with him, and she's just so tired. And the mother obviously doesn't have, like, she would have been there if she had time or means to be there. Obviously she's at work or somewhere. So for me, it was an essential part of the movie. So I think in terms of who gets to define that, like that kind of expression, and when is it enough and when is it, and how it gets defined, I think a lot of it has to do with socioeconomic background of the movie.
I can jump in for group 6. I was with Barbara and Janina, and they can feel free to pipe in as well. Obviously, I think we all came away feeling uncomfortable. And we explored that a little bit and compared that to some of the other movies too. You know, Third Wife and The Sandstorm, and, you know, how some of the same themes resonated, or some of the sexualization of the children. Personally, I spent a long time in France. I lived there for 6 or 7 years, and so I'm very familiar with that diaspora community and the housing projects and the ghettos and all of that. So a lot of that like pained me on a very personal level, seeing some of that, because I spent so many years there, and some of that is a very true depiction. We brought it back a little bit to the US context, because we were talking about some of this, you know, studies here that, you know, maybe while girls are being more sexualized in media, that in actuality, they're acting out on it in sexual acts less. So, you know, we were looking at some of that data, as well as even around schools that, and we agree with the point that was made, like, where are the schools in all of this? Where are the schools and how the kids are dressing, the mental health counselors, like all of that. But even schools that have tried to enforce things around proper dress code here in the US, have come up against things about, you know, that are they racially targeting girls of color more because they have different body shapes, and so what they're wearing may look more sexually provocative because they're bustier than a white girl, for example. So even some of those dynamics of race and how those interplay. And then one of the last things we were talking about was, you know, just child marriage in general, but even that UNICEF USA is having a big campaign this year about the laws even here in the US, because there are only like 2 or 4 states that actually have a 18-year-old age minimum age mandatory here in the US. And so even here, you know, where we think that it's not a problem, it is a problem as well. So those are some of the themes, but feel free to jump in.
I agree with everything that Christina said. Thank you.
So have we, Archie, gone through all the groups?
I think we have. Is anyone left? Any group?
No, my group is left. So we had Cheryl and Marcia and Anna, and one of them was going to volunteer and share. So who'd like to volunteer and share from the 3 of you? I didn't see the movie, but we had a really great discussion. But how about Anna?
So I think we have been talking about how this is being translated in the cultures we live in. And one member of our group was talking about the fact that, well, when it is supervised by adult, is it better or is it worse? Because she has seen it around in many shapes and forms, and it's like the girls may not understand it, but the adult who sees it does understand it. So to this question that nobody saw them in the school, for example, but well, sometimes they do see them in the school. But yeah, so this was one of the things I think that was important to highlight. Then we also had conversation about the actors and the fact that one of the actors was in fact 11-year-old, and she seemed to get psychological help during the shooting. Then we talked about many different things, and it was a great conversation. So I don't want to summarize it actually, because I think just the way people say it with the words, this is where all the nuance is. So it was very interesting to also hear how like people phrase things and how people say which kind of words they use. So thank you for organizing.
We had just a couple of other things. One
yes,
was,
please.
we talked about the very close-ups of the girls when they were doing their dances for the contest, and whether those extreme close-ups were necessary. And we talked about the point that they probably weren't, and that you could get really a better dramatic effect actually of having the view from the cinematography point of view of being what the audience saw, because you could see the shock that the audience registered in seeing the moves. And that one, you didn't need to be right on top of the girls to get the message, but 2, it would have been a dramatic impact to see it as the live audience, as the audience saw it and how it affected them. So that was one thing we talked about. And we also kind of explored why she sent the photograph that she did. We didn't come up with a really good answer. So if anybody has a good answer, that would be wonderful. But it was, you know, a little, to me anyway, a little fuzzy as to why she, at that point, I think she'd had a fight with her father. She locked herself in the bathroom. And why at that point she decided to send the
photograph
that she did.
Actually, there's, may I try to answer?
Of course.
I think, and please other people jump in, but I think that at that moment in time, her peer group was angry at her for having worn panties that were very girl-like, like meaning they had like paws on them, of like a little stuffed animal type paws. And the group was kind of shamed in front of the whole schoolyard. And so they blamed Ame for having like worn the wrong pair of panties, even though it was not her fault that she was being bullied by another person in the courtyard and had her pants basically pulled down to her ankles, or at least to her knees.
Well,
And so,
she attacked the girl who pulled her pants down.
okay.
She started that. So that might have been part of why her peer group was mad, was that she had started this fight, which then caused their clique to be exposed as babyish.
It was shame, for sure. The whole thing was about shame.
Yes.
And then Ame felt like the only way she could make up for the fact that she got into that fight, as you're describing, and then also you know, was exposed in this way to, and wearing these like kind of like not very cool underwear. And that's why they went off and bought all the like the underwear that they did, and you know, sort of were throwing it around that was later. But anyway, so she takes a picture of herself nude, obviously, and like in the bathroom, and the fight was over the phone, and that was with her, I believe that was her brother. I think that was her
cousin Samba. Cousin Samba.
Cousin. Okay, so relation. And so she had still stolen his phone, but she wanted to get she needed to get that last picture in before she gave the phone back. And I think that was the reason why, to answer your question, Marcia, she took the picture of herself nude because she wanted to kind of prove that she was standing up for the group, and that this was the way she was standing up for the group. And then the group turned on her, obviously, because they were like, oh, that was way too extreme. Now they think we're all like, you know, sluts and this kind of thing. And so, you know, worse.
The question, we touched on that a little bit too, the question of why that showed she was grown up. Was it just simply by like grown-ups take nude selfies, and so that means I'm grown up, or I have pubic hair, so
right.
I'm really...
Well, she had been watching those pornographic dance moves in the midst of her Senegalese prayer group on her phone, and was getting inspired by like more than just teenage dancing. That was probably more like, I mean, I would call it porn that she was watching. And I don't know, you know, that those lines are being drawn in any kind of clear way at all amongst, you know, kids today, between porn and like dance moves and stuff like that. I don't think so, because like Ame was kind of like, okay, well, that's a dance move I'd like to learn, but it was actually kind of like a strip club. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I might be drawing lines myself that I shouldn't be drawing. So, but yeah.
Well, the auntie did say she's a woman now when she got period. So obviously, like, I mean, but they have no sexual education or anything, which is also why they have these stupid conversations like in the bathroom or something. Mm-hmm. So for her, like, I got to do something. What do I got to do? Okay, here's the thing that I got to do. So I think it's like people were saying, it's something like triggered by extreme emotions, but then it's also based on like lack of any education about it. And
well, it seemed like a sense of agency, right? So the one response to being bullied is to look for a way to have control, right? To have control. So if she's being bullied about her panties, she's going to one-up it, and she's going to own it. You know, she's going to do it. She's going to own it. No one's going to take it from her. So it seemed like a lot of agency. And, you know, Marcia, you had talked about the close-up photos. We started our conversation on that in our group, and it seems like all of our era is like that. Like every movie I go to is like one shot, you know, and they like drill, whether it's a war movie or a love movie or whatever it is, it's always like overdone to the lowest denominator, you know, messaging, right? As opposed to a depth and a scope of artistic expression, which is so much more inviting, right? But whether it's media of any form seems to be very overdone. That just seems to be where we're at, it feels like. So that was what we came up with on that point.
Yeah, we had one more thing we started to discuss that hasn't been mentioned here is just even like with the pandemic too, this is another layer that they're seeing like trafficking in general increase. And so we just started talking about how some of this kind of gets into that nasty subject as well. Like if girls start posting these types of pictures, they're already online, is it making them more susceptible for being trafficked? We didn't get too far into it, but.
Yes, I think we also talked about the fact that if you were a pedophile, how would you react to the movie? How would you react to those, going back to the close-up shots? You know, none of us presumably knows what motivates a pedophile or what turns a pedophile on, but is this movie something that would turn on a pedophile? Is it in that way a very negative force in society? You know,
and Marcia, there is a small literature on that, and it's not necessarily what you would think, that the pedophiles who were studied, they are turned on by children, by prepubescent children, being children, looking and acting like children. That their idea of porn is, you know, a baby bonnet and a lollipop and that kind of imagery, as opposed to dressing the children up like adult women, which isn't what turns these folks on. So it's a limited literature, but I found that very interesting.
That is interesting. Thank you. That makes perfect sense. That very, very, very good insight. Thank you.
I think one point that I want to make really quick, I know we're wrapping up, is it seems to be that the elephant in the room is the locus of control, right? So whether it's an expression or getting on social media or whatever, where's the line between any of us being able to explore ourselves and then the locus of control flipping, right, to trafficking or to, you know, being drawn into something else, even in a more subtle way, like even in an environment. I know I recently, well, it doesn't matter, but you know, somebody expressing that they think you're sexy or they want something from you doesn't mean you're going to give it to them. I mean, who cares, right? Okay, thanks for sharing is kind of my view on it, right? I mean, and then there's also the, are you eliciting that? And there is a locus of control that women should own, right? If you are using your sexuality to get a job or to get whatever, own it, right? I mean, that's what you're doing, own it. But that doesn't mean that if you're sexy and some guy, your boss, wants to sleep with you, you know, you don't have to do it, right? You can just say back off. So the locus of control, I think, is just like something that I would love to have seen expressed publicly, but it wasn't. And they were children, but it kind of leads down that road.
And I was just gonna say one last thing as well, is that locus of control and that exploration that we saw in the movie, it becomes permanent in our digital age. It's, you know, these pictures last now, especially with, you know, the go back machine on the internet and things like that. And that's, I think, unfortunate, because you really have to, as you said, you know, really take control of your own choices from a very young age now.
Great. Thank you everyone for this wonderful discussion. I hate to cut it short, but we're way above our time for the event today. So once again, thank you for all your perspectives. It was really, really interesting. A big thank you to Joanne for leading this discussion. I think, Joanne, you were brilliant in summarizing the movie and laying out some very pertinent questions for everyone to discuss. The choice of this movie was also suggested by Joanne. So thank you for that. And for everyone here today, if you have a suggestion for our next movie club movie, please send me an email. I'll just post my email address on the chat box. I would also like to invite you to join us for our annual roundtable on Feb 21st. The topic for the roundtable is Impact of COVID on Women. We will be emailing you the details on it soon. I would like to invite Barbara, our Connect chair, who would also like to make an announcement regarding our expo. So Barbara.
Thanks, Auntie, and everyone. We're going to have our virtual Women's Empowerment Expo this April. It's going to be spread over 2 Saturdays. We're going to talk about organizations facing or that help women and girls in the area of health, that support them in terms of women's empowerment. And then next week, April 24th, will be on education. So if any of you work for organizations where health or education are a key focus of your work, or you know someone who might be a good panelist or an organization that might want to be showcased at these expo events, please contact me at connect@harvardglobalwe.org, because we really want the the organizations that are doing this important work in health and education to be showcased to our alumni. So,
Can you throw your email into the chat?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Also, GlobalWE is looking for global focused events. So if there is a topic or a speaker you're passionate about and would like to plan an event around it, please connect with us by sending an email to programs@harvardglobalwe.org. I've put that in the chat box as well. We would be happy to invite you to champion that event. And I hope everyone enjoyed today's discussion. Stay safe, stay home, and have a lovely day. For those who are going to have a day, and good night to those who are going to go to bed.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you all
Bye.
for joining.
Thank you, Joanne. You were brilliant.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Joanne.
Archie.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks a lot, Joanne.
Awesome work. Thank
you guys
you.
for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Victoria.